Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. We have another video. So quickly, about 2 days ago we dropped some videos, and then we're dropping another video. Anyway, this is the top that we're going to be making for today. I don't know how to call it. That's what it looks like on me. The little picture that flashed, that's what the top looks like on me. Because it looks a bit awkward on the dress form. Anyway, when you get your pattern, you can get this pattern on Etsy. Just type in her patterns and go through the store. You will get the pattern there. Anyway, we're going to be printing the layers that we want. So this can only be done on Adobe Acrobat on your PC. It cannot be done on your phone. Anyway, I'm just going in, selecting the layers and seeing which one I want and printing it. Remember to print at 100% scale or at actual size. And you want to print page 1 first and measure that box is 2 inches. And that is the layout of how your pages should be stuck together. What I'm going to do is I'm just snipping the right side of the border and also the bottom, and when I stick everything together they are going to overlap. Now you must know, if you purchase this pattern, that it does have a 1/2 inch seam allowance already included, and also we are going to be using about 1/2 meter of fabric for our lining and 1/2 meter of fabric for our front facing fabric. And also you are going to need some iron-on interfacing. Not a lot, it's just a teeny weeny, it's so tiny how much you're going to need. Anyway, what I'm doing is I'm now going to cut my pattern pieces. I've put my front center pieces on fold because we need it on fold, and then the other pieces are not on fold. So I'm tracing my pieces first, then I'm pinning everything, then I'm gonna cut later. So I think I told you guys the most important things to know, right? So there is a seam allowance in this pattern. It's 1/2 inch seam allowance on all the pieces, and also you are going to need 1/2 meter of fabric for both your lining and also your front facing. And you can just have 1 meter of fabric and just cut from your front facing fabric, and then just make your top reversible. You don't have to have a separate fabric for the lining. You get what I'm saying? Anyway, so I'm gonna go ahead and cut my pieces. Wow, okay, so these are your pattern pieces. That was like a long cutting session. Hey, I don't think I'm going to be able to edit it because this is the final edit and I usually do my voiceover after the final edit. So anyway, these are your pattern pieces, and then remember you are going to be having double these pieces for your lining. And also what I'm going to do for my straps, the straps that are going to be on my shoulders, I am going to cut them on the bias. Now if you want those nice skinny straps, always cut them on the bias because it makes it so much easier to turn them inside out. I don't know the science, what the science behind it is, but it is a tip that I saw on Instagram, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it, and I did it, and wow, they were nice and skinny and they were easy to turn inside out. So I'm just gonna make my straps 14 inches. So make your straps 14 inches long and cut them out. Remember, we're cutting them on the bias. And yeah, I will also, what I am going to be doing from now on is I'm going to link some helpful videos from other channels that talk about some of the things that I talk about, like how to cut on the bias, how to cut along the selvage, how to do a top stitch. So if you look in my description, you will see links to those videos. So my other straps are not going to be cut on the bias, mainly because I don't want to waste fabric. Sometimes when you're cutting on the bias, you can end up wasting a lot of fabric. So because those straps are not really that important, I am going to be cutting them how you would normally cut any how you would normally cut your straps, you know. So it's not a big deal because, you know, they're not that important, not as important as the ones that are going to be on your shoulders. So this is how I'm cutting my other straps. And I did cut 4 straps, and then when I was done with when I was close to getting done with the project, I realized that, you know what, I think I need 3 straps on each side, making it 6. When I did the sample piece funny, when I did the sample piece, I forgot that I was going to be making it little tieable straps at the back, and so I did the sample piece with loops. So, and I did the 2 samples with the loops. So anyway, this is what I'm going to do, right? I've taken my back piece and I'm cutting about I made a line, let's say 5 centimeters, right? And I'm cutting that out. Now what I'm going to do with that piece is it's not a big deal. You don't have to make it big, you don't have to, just make it whatever you want to make it, right? The most important thing is to have it. And then I'm going to cut from my interfacing, and that is going to be put on the back pieces to kind of stabilize the fabric for when I put the straps in. So that's why I said you were going to need interfacing. So but you don't need a lot of interfacing. It's just a little piece like that. So voila, I'm just notching the top of that interfacing. So the measurements for that are not important as long as there's enough to just basically go onto your center back, right? So now I'm quickly going to start with my straps. I'm folding my straps right sides together and just stitching. I'm making the straps they're about 1 centimeter wide, if that's important to you. So just make them 1 centimeter wide. Do not worry about that little stain. My marker kind of just leaked on me, but it's okay because it is disappearing ink, so we're grateful for that. So these are the bias straps, right? And I'm making these they're about 1/2 centimeter wide, very tiny, but not that tiny, you know. We've seen people make even thinner straps, you know. So yeah. So now when I'm done, I'm going to just snip off the excess seam allowance on all my straps. And then I am going to turn them inside out. And you know what? It was kind of hard turning them inside out because obviously we don't cut them on the bias, but you know, it's okay. So I'm going to just turn them inside out. Do you need to have a loop turner? I would say it's a very helpful thing, but sometimes a loop turner is not that helpful if your straps are extremely long and the loop turner is not long enough. You might find yourself using the bobby pin tip. So what you should do actually is try to get a small loop turner, a medium loop turner, and a super long loop turner if it is available to you. I haven't seen one being available to me, but then I use a medium one, but that's something that you should know if you're going to purchase a loop turner. It is a good investment. I would definitely recommend getting one. It makes everything so quick and so easy. So yeah, definitely get it, but it's not a need, it's not a must. Anyway, this is what my straps look like. One of the straps looks really nice, and that is because I ironed it, and I just wanted to show you the difference between when a strap is ironed down versus when it's not. So those are all my straps after I've ironed everything down. So now I'm taking my center front piece, right, my center front piece, the bottom piece, that piece. I'm taking it and I'm going to put it right sides together with the back piece, and I'm going to pin. And one thing I want you guys to pay attention to is, because I've already added the seam allowance, you will notice that when you are pinning these pieces together, in the corner there, it looks like the back piece is longer than the front piece, right? I want you to not worry about that, because when you stitch it at that 1/2 an inch seam allowance, everything will cohesively like go together. The reason why it is a bit longer is because one of them, they at an angle basically, so you know, they at an angle, so that's why it just seems like it's longer. I've seen people complain on other people's Etsy stores like, oh, the seams don't match up, the seams don't line up, and it's like, no, if you just sew at that seam allowance, I promise you it will 100% match up. So I've done the back piece, and I've also done the lining, and I've also done the front. So what I'm going to do is, remember those pieces that we cut from our interfacing? Yes, we're going to take those pieces and we are going to stick them, iron them onto our back piece, and we are ironing them onto the wrong side, of course. So just quickly go iron them, and that is what they look like. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to iron my seams open, because I don't know, I just like them when they're ironed open. Everything just seems so professional and so flat and just so gorgeous. So I'm just going to iron everything open. Okay, so I ironed them and I set them aside. Now let's work on the inner part of the dress, right? So I'm taking that center front piece again, and I'm going to take the side front piece, all right? And I'm just going to pin using the notches. Now I want to say that you guys are going to see later what I'm talking about. When I was done doing this entire project, I did end up adding more notches. You guys will see where I've added the more notches, because I was realizing that, oh my goodness, this is a bit confusing. Even though I'm the one who drafted the pattern, I was like, there's not enough notches. So we went ahead and added them. So after pinning everything together, I'm just going to quickly go to the sewing machine and just stitch. I'm using my stitch is about 2 meters, 2 meters, wow, 2 millimeters long. Yeah, so in case you're wondering, the stitch length is about 2 millimeters. So I'm just stitching everything. So when I'm done stitching my side front piece, I forgot what I called those pieces on the pattern. I'm so sorry guys, but you know which pieces. When I'm done with them, what I'm doing is I'm just gonna clip them so that they can, you know, rest nice and flat. And also what I'm gonna do is I'm also gonna make that seam allowance a bit smaller, because it's a bit excessive. I'm gonna cut it and make it a bit smaller. So now what I'm going to do is I'm taking that whole piece, the inner piece basically, and I am pinning it onto my bottom front piece, making it fit in there. Now this is the most important part. I added another notch, right? I added more notches on this, because this is the part where I was like, I'm the one who made this pattern and I feel like there's not enough notches. So how is my customer gonna feel when they bought it and they're putting it together and they're like, there are not enough notches? So the first notch is gonna be your center notch, so the middle notch. And when you're cutting your pattern pieces, always make sure that you notch them, hey? You notch the center of whatever piece that you're cutting on fold. So yeah, that's the most important thing. And then I did add another notch on the side there that will help you, right? And then what you want to do is just pin everything. And like I said, just like the other piece, right, when you're pinning them together, you are going to notice that one of the pieces seems like it's a bit longer than the other piece. When you sew it at the 1/2 inch seam allowance, you will notice that everything will be, you know, 100% cohesive. Everything will just line up perfectly. So because of the whole, it's at an angle thing, right? So right over there, that little corner over there, that's where you're going to see that one of the pieces seems a bit slightly longer. Don't worry about it. So let's quickly go to the sewing machine and just stitch. when I'm sewing, I always make sure that I use a lot of pins. I would rather use a lot of pins than not enough pins. So you know what, every time when you pop into the fabric store, grab yourself some pins. You can never have too many pins, and you know that they get lost quickly. Even though you're the only person who's in your sewing room, you just never understand, how do they get lost, so always invest in them. I think they're a good investment. So I'm just stitching everything over here, and you know, just removing the pins as I'm stitching. Okay, now this is what the piece looks like. It is sitting inside there comfortably. So what I'm going to do again is I am going to just clip the curves. You see where there's like a curve? I'm going to clip that just to release the tension and help it lay flat. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go press everything down, and I did press everything towards the cup, towards the inside of the cup. I don't know if you want to call that the cup, but I'm going to call that the cup. I'm going to say it's towards the inside of the cup. Now what I'm going to do is on the right side of my fashion fabric, my front facing fabric, also known as that, I am going to quickly place my straps. Now when you are placing your straps, you do want to test your straps out to see if they are 100% flat. You don't want your straps to be twisting around. You don't want that twist. So just hold your strap up, right, and see, like, is it going, is it flat, is it going how it's supposed to be going, or is there a twist somewhere? And if there is a twist, just work on it. I know mine looks like there's a twist, but I promise you there isn't. I did check. Now what you want to do is take that lining piece and put it on top of the front facing fabric, and then we are going to stitch the top seam. I did lose footage of that, I'm so sorry, but basically you put them right sides together and you stitch the top. And then what we are going to do now is we're going to do my favorite thing to do, which is to top stitch or to edge stitch, however you know this as. So basically what I'm doing is I'm pushing my seam allowance towards my lining, right, and then I'm going to stitch about 1 millimeter away from the original seam that we stitched. 1 millimeter, 2 millimeters, around there, preferably 1. The closer the better. And I'm using a shorter stitch length. I'm using about 1.5 millimeters as my stitch length, and I'm going to stitch away. I have found that, you know, top stitching gets easier according to the sewing machine that you have. If top stitching is a problem for you, it's probably because you don't have like a really good sewing machine. My first sewing machine was just like, it wasn't a good one, and top stitching was like the worst thing ever. I hated it. And then I upgraded my sewing machine and I was like, oh my goodness, I actually like it. It's not that hard. So yeah, so we're gonna top stitch, reach the end. Oh, there is something new that I learned about, you know, not having to double not having to backstitch when you're working. I learned this new little trick after I was done obviously with this video, but in my next video I'm going to share the trick with you. So what I'm doing now is I first started off by marking the seam allowance on that bottom seam. After marking the seam allowance, I marked about 1.5 inches, or 1.5 inches from the marking that I made for the seam allowance, and another 1.5 inches from the top seam. And then what I did was whatever seam or whatever space was left in there, I divided it into two, and then I made my second mark. So for me it was 4 inches left, right? It will vary depending on your size. Some sizes are bigger, so yeah. So remember, it's first we marked the seam allowance, then we made 1.5 inch mark from the top, then we made another 1.5 inch mark from the bottom after the seam allowance, and then we measured those two to see how much distance there was, and then we halved that and then marked it again. Whew, guys, I hope that is not confusing. I really hope that is not confusing, but you get it. If you don't, just send me a message on my Insta story. I will respond very fast. I try to be as quick as I can be when it comes to responding to messages that I get on my Etsy store. So now what I'm doing is I'm stitching my straps onto the lining piece, right? Also, what you want to do is you want to make sure that your straps make sense. You don't want to stitch your straps in the wrong direction, is what I'm trying to say. So you see the direction that I'm stitching my straps, make sure that you are stitching yours in the same direction. I don't even know how to explain this direction, but yeah, this direction. So you want to make sure that the short end of your straps is basically in line with your seam allowance. You don't want it to be like the longer ish. I don't know how to explain it, I'm so sorry. What I just did, do that, right? Then what you want to do is you want to take your other piece, fold it over, and then we are going to stitch the center back seams closed, basically. Now, okay, then when you're done, what you want to do is you are now going to pin the bottom seam. Please try and make sure that all your seams are lining up, meaning that all the seams that you have is lining up with the front seams. Even though people are not going to notice, just do it. Also, yeah, just pin the bottom, and then after you pin the bottom, you're going to stitch that bottom seam, but make sure that you leave an opening. Make your opening, let's say 5 centimeters. If you think you can get away with 4, then do it with 4, but just leave an opening. That's important. So now I've stitched everything. Where that little strap or string is peeking through is where I left the opening. So there it is. So what you're going to do now is you are going to just snip those corners off at an angle. Just cut them off so that you are able to turn the top inside out without any problems, and there isn't that heavy bulking at the corner. So just go ahead, snip. And when you are done, you're going to turn it inside out. When you are done turning the top inside out, what you're going to do is obviously take it to your iron and press it down, because you know it looks weird and uncomfortable at that bottom seam. Looks like a little bubble, so you want to press it down with an iron so it's nice and flat. And then we are going to close that pocket that we made using a blind stitch. We're going to hand stitch it. If you don't want to hand stitch it, you can just go and do a quick little straight stitch on that pocket and close it. But I would say go ahead and do a blind stitch just to make it look nice and professional and make everything invisible. So I did go ahead and press it behind the scenes. I know you guys can see that. Now I'm just going to get my needle and I'm going to do a quick blind stitch. And like I said, I will be linking some very helpful videos in the description, so check them out in the description, so that if you're confused with any part, you will be able to just watch a more in detail video to help you figure out which part is not that clear to you. So anyway guys, this is the end of the video, and this is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed the video and you found it helpful. If you did, do like, do comment, do subscribe. Let me know what you think. Was it easy? Did you go buy the pattern? Go buy the pattern, go buy the pattern. I'm always having a sale. We're always having a sale at her patterns, so go. You might grab you a couple of things.
All night, say it. All night. Hello, stranger. They've been waiting. Just as I recall that, ass is still amazing. Playing, baby. Saying, baby. Love it, shit, you know I'm crazy. So go ahead and put a drink up. I'm so glad we got to link up. Yeah, it's taking that off, taking that off.